Hello and welcome to another What Sold video. I am so excited to share with you everything that sold for me the first week of 2024, so January 1st to January 7th. And we're gonna scoot over here and just go ahead and get into my eBay sales because eBay is my main bay. And the first thing I'm gonna share with you is this set of 3 books by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I picked these up for 30 cents, so 10 cents each book. And it sold for $14.87. I made a quick $10 and beautiful vintage books went away to a new home. Miss Moxie, of course, is here. Down here at the bottom, you know, I have to show her face or else you guys get sad. And I'm a little bit closer here than I normally am. Now this next sale I will probably not pick up again. This is actually something I picked up 4 years ago and it finally sold. I picked it up because I thought vintage pins have value, and some of them do, but this one was seemingly not one of those. I paid 50 cents for this at New to You, and it sold for $7.87. So did I make a profit? Yes. Was it worth waiting 4 years for it? No. So, but I sold it, and everything sells eventually. It's just, do you really want to wait for it? But fortunately, this is one of those items that was super small and didn't take up a whole lot of space. The thing is that even though it is super small and didn't take up a whole lot of space, you have to think, you know, I might actually end up losing this because it's so small. But thankfully I had not, and it went off to its new home. Another book, I paid 10 cents for this at that same big book buyout, and so 10 cents into it, it was a brand new copy of Great Expectations, which is a classic by Charles Dickens. Again, I will highly recommend if you have never seen the 90s adaptation of Great Expectations, Ethan Hawke and I believe Gwyneth Paltrow. Highly recommend it. Definitely love that movie. Sold for $9.87. So the next item is the one I'm sure you guys all clicked on this video for, and that is this absolutely gorgeous Jensen silver and copper mug. I actually found this at an estate sale in a box in the garage, and I paid $2 for it. Now it was heavily tarnished when I picked it up. I looked at it and I knew it was a mid-century piece, but it was, like I said, very tarnished, and so I was like, I'll clean it up, and you know, figuring it's a really nice mid-century tankard, probably 50 bucks, no big deal. It then sat in my death pile for a year in a box before I finally got around to listing it. And then when I cleaned it up, because like I said, it was dingy and dirty and it had like motor oil on it as well, because again, it was in a garage, and I cleaned it up and then I looked at the maker's mark on it, yours Jensen, and realized that, oh my goodness, no, I actually had something really great on my hands. And this is a very sought after maker of a fine silver. I think they are still a maker, and if you go to their website, you can see what their stuff retails for, which is a pretty penny. And so I decided to go ahead and list this high and see what happens. And I did. I listed it, and it's been listed for a year. After about 6 months, I dropped the price from my original price of over $1,000, which was hopeful. But that's what, when I had listed this, the other listings were going for. And then after I made my video talking about listing this item and like finding it in my death pile and being like, oh my god, a whole bunch of others just magically happened to appear on eBay at that time. So I'm not upset about that. That's the whole reason why I share stuff, is so that way maybe you know something is valuable that you've been, you know, sitting on as well. And I finally received an offer of $350 for this $2 find, estate sale find, and I immediately accepted. I was a little bit nervous, so what I ended up doing is I did pay for the additional insurance, because this, you know, is shipping at the beginning of the year, which if you've been a reseller for a while, you know that pretty much from Thanksgiving until the second week of January, USPS is just flooded with packages and returns and shipping, and stuff goes missing. And I've had at least one package go missing this season, but only one. So I did put additional insurance on it, and perfectly happy with that. And I did actually check the buyer, their feedback, before I accepted the offer as well. And this is someone who routinely buys expensive antiques, when I looked at their feedback and looked at the items that the feedback came from. So I was very confident in the buyer. So I went ahead and shipped it. It got there. You can see I already got positive feedback for it, and I was just super, super happy that this sold and that my instincts were even better than I was expecting them to be, although now I'm a little sad that I didn't actually film inside that estate sale. It was one of those surprise estate sales where my partner was like, hey, I see this estate sale and I think you might like some of the stuff in there. And we went. Ended up being really good for me, but he didn't find anything he liked. That seems to be how it works, but I love this and I'm so grateful. So keep an eye out for yours, Jensen. It is a Danish maker. This is a pair of Madewell jeans. These are the high-rise slim boy jeans. I picked them up because they had a long inseam, and as a tall girly who has a 32-inch inseam need, I always pick up tall stuff, even maybe if it's not the most desirable style. But it's Madewell, and I figured there are other tall girlies that need tall girly pants. So I picked this up, sold for $17, and of course the buyer had to pay for shipping. This is a dress I picked up at that estate sale that I got kicked out of. If you want to hear that story, I will link that video up above. But this is actually something I had to use my stain treatment method 4 times to get the stains out. This was from the 90s. You know, you might not have thought that it was worth it, but I do a lot of laundry because I sell a lot of clothes. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just like, oh, I didn't get it out. I'll try it again. Or it didn't all the way come out. I'll try it again just before I run the next load. So it wasn't a lot of work, but it still took several times because there were these big black, like blue stains, black and blue stains on the back. I don't know if maybe some dye came off from another garment in the first load and that's what happened, or if it's just something inside. I don't know. I don't know why the stains were there. I washed it. It got them all out. I put it on Karen, which is my dress form, and she worked it and it sold for $23.90. I paid $2 for this at that estate sale. This was a Thrift Miss pickup, purely a style pickup because y'all know how I feel about my lovely vintage knitwear. I love my vintage knitwear so very much, and so when I saw this Gitano 90s piece in an extra large, I was like, I've got to pick this up. I've got to find it a new home. And it did sell very quickly for $29.87, so it took less than a month to sell, and those of you that buy and resell vintage know that that's a very short turnover time for vintage. But I did put it in a video, so if you are a viewer that bought this from me, thank you very much. I do know that there was at least one person that was interested in this sweater. So if it was you, thank you. If it was not you, still thank you because you gave it a new home. This was a dollar find at Diversity for their Power Hour. American Apparel is no longer around, or it has not been around since I think 2017 or 2018 because the owner of the business did a no-nos. And so they just kind of shuttered their doors. But there are still some people who love that, you know, super thin look. And all that their stuff was made in the USA, and this was a button fly. So I decided to go ahead and pick it up because it was $1. And denim in my area is very expensive if you are not picking it up either at a Power Hour or at an estate sale or, you know, at the bins. Sold for $15, perfectly happy with that. This was something I was actually considering taking to a buy-sell trade because I've had it forever and it was not selling. This was a Flash t-shirt. I paid $4 for this because it was new with tags. I was like, oh, this is the Flash. It'll be good, you know, and I knew that the movie was coming out, or the DC, something was coming out soon, but that was before, you know, Ezra Miller, the stuff for Ezra Miller came out. So sold it for $9. Pretty much I relisted it. I thought about it. I was like, all right, I'll give it one more relist. And then if it doesn't sell, I'll take it to the buy sell trade because I'll take it because it's new with tags. And yeah, so I doubled my money. And again, everything sells eventually. And that was just poor timing on my part. So, oh well. This is a Tommy Bahama piece. I actually picked this up at the bins, so I have $1 into this. And I offered this up for sale on Whatnot and for $2 and nobody bought it. So I sold it. I listed it afterwards on eBay because everything that I offer on Whatnot is stuff that I'm more than happy to resell myself. It's just kind of like a first dibs option. And it sold for $11.90 within a month of me listing it on eBay. So another great sale for me. This is another Ben's Fine. The brand is Rough Hewn. And this is from the 80s, and this, you still see the dry cleaning tag on it. This was a heavy duty woolen sweater, and I love my vintage knitwear, and even though this was very plain, because it was rough hewn and it was a heavy wool blend, I decided to go ahead and pick it up. I did end up paying like $2 for this because, as I said, it was a heavy sweater. It still sold for my full asking price of $21.87, so $2 into $22 all day. This is a True Religion piece. I rarely find True Religion in my area, despite there being an outlet in Williamsburg, and that's because people seem to hold on to their True Religion stuff, and also the thrift stores in my area tend to mark it up. But this was not. I think I paid like $4.50 for this, and it sold for $24.87, my full asking price. This was a piece I picked up at an estate sale. I paid $2 for this polo. It's from the 70s, and it sold for $10. I love, you know, buying and selling vintage, some stuff, because this was super plain. I didn't expect it to sell for much, and it's also not like a brand that's still currently popular, but I do want to say vintage pieces when I can. Speaking of, this is a new with tags Pendleton skirt. It's 100% wool. It had pockets. It was dead stock, and it came from that big vintage buyout, and so, you know, I have $0 into this. I mean, I technically have a quarter into it, but I've already paid myself back for that haul. So perfectly happy to let it go for $18. This is something I picked up when I went thrifting with my friend Victoria when she came up from Mississippi, who's super geeked here on YouTube. And I found this at that CHKD that was just absolutely sweltering inside. They, you know, 96 degrees outside, and they had no air conditioning. Those poor workers. But I picked this up and it sold for $17. Figs is a brand that I will consistently buy and resell because it consistently sells for me. This is something I picked up for Thriftmas. It's a Coolie Bar dress. I paid $8 for this at the Goodwill, and it sold for $18. And yeah, I knew I wouldn't make a whole lot of money, but I still doubled my money, and I flipped it within 30 days, which is amazing. So Coolie Bar, depending on the piece, can flip for a lot more, but it will flip quickly, even in women's. Like the men's stuff does have a higher sell-through rate, but both of them have a pretty decent sell-through rate. Another piece from that big vintage buyout I did, so I have a quarter into this, and it sold for $14.30. I've made so much money off of the vintage buyout, and I still have over 100 pieces I still need to list. So this is something I pick up the bins. I love buying and selling books from the bins. It is one of my most favorite things because I know if I don't do it, they end up in the trash, which makes me sad. So this is a Happy Hollister's book from 1958. I know most people know about, you know, Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, but there are a couple of other series as well from the 50s and 60s that can be worth picking up. The Happy Hollister's is one of them. It was the permabound binding, and it sold for $9.87. So I had 50 cents into this, so I made an easy $5. This was from that big book buyout I did, so I have 10 cents into this book, and this actually was an international sale, so somebody paid like $20 to ship this to them as well. But because this is kind of like a philosophy book from this individual whose name I will butcher and will not try to pronounce, it sold for $26.87. So it's a heavy book because it was a thick philosophy book. So I made 20 bucks off of this. Perfectly happy to do that. Another book, I actually picked this up for Thriftmas. I picked these up because they are new. I do not recommend picking up the Sookie Stackhouse books used unless you will get the entire series. If you get the entire 13, 14 book series, or like a series of them, so like 1 through whatever, go for it. But I would not pick them up unless they're new. So I paid $1 for this. It sold for $7.87. So I made, you know, $2 off of it. Would you do that? Probably not. Would I do that?
Obviously.
But that's also because I found a bunch of these for Thriftmas. So my hope was that they would take advantage of the buy 3 get 1 free, in which case I would make a lot more profit. And that will come into play in a couple of what sold videos. So this next piece is another figs piece. I found a bunch of men's size large figs. Someone, I guess, decided to get out of the nursing profession and donated all of their figs, and I happened to walk in to the Goodwill when they pushed that new rack out full of them, and I bought every single piece. So I have $5.25 into this pair of pants, and they sold for $20. This is a book I put up on Whatnot and nobody bought it. It's Joe Haldeman, who is a science fiction author from the 70s. I mean, he's consistently wrote since started writing in the 70s. But this is The Accidental Time Machine. This sold for $5.87. I have 25 cents into this book. This is a brand that I decided to try after watching Kaylee Elaine. She says she has some good luck with Susan Graver, but the larger pieces. So when I found this at the bins, I figured best way to try out new brands is at the bins because you have very low buy cost. I offered this on Whatnot for $2 and nobody bought it, and it sold within a month after listing it on eBay for $16.08. So far, the larger sizes for Susan Graver do sell well for me. This is another book I offered on Whatnot. It is a Stephen King omnibus from three of his most well-known novels, Carrie, Salem's Lot, and The Shining. The Shining, of course, is his first book. And nobody bought it. I offered it up for $3 and it did sell for $17.50. So I paid 50 cents and it sold for $17.50, but you know, it's free shipping, so I still made like $13 off of this, which is great. Another piece from the big vintage buyout, so I have a quarter into this. This is Breckenridge. Breckenridge is a common, I think they still make it, but it's an okay vintage brand. But normally when I pick up Breckenridge, if I'm out shopping, it has to be like a substantial, like interesting print or pattern. Sold for $13.50. I mean, I just bought everything I saw in that lady's closet. Pretty much. I bought a lot. There were like 4 of us vintage sellers that were in this lady's closet. She had a giant home and every single closet was stuffed full, and it was like organized by decade. It was like she'd filled up one closet for a decade and then moved to a different room and filled up another closet for a decade. It was amazing. But yeah, I picked up so much vintage from there. And that was actually the last item. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys learned something from this, and I hope the sales are doing well for you here in 2024 as they are for me. But I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, bye. Bye. Hero, hero. I wanna be a hero, hero. Oh, the hero.